Hello friends, the Indian media landscape is vast, diverse and complex, encompassing an array of outlets ranging from national newspapers to regional television channels. This diversity reflects the country's rich linguistic, cultural and socio-economic plurality. However, the media's operations are not without challenges and criticisms as it navigates through a web of regulations, corporate influences, and accusations of furling extremism. Today, we'll delve into the intricacies of the Indian media ecosystem, examining the key issues it faces and the efforts to address these challenges. Before proceeding, please do support me by liking, sharing, and subscribing to my channel. Thank you. One of the defining characteristics of the Indian media landscape is its regulatory framework. It has to deal with the laws that curb critical journalism. Defamation and sedition laws have often been misused to curtail freedom of expression. In 2021, journalists from The Wire and other media organizations were charged with sedition for their coverage of the farmers' protests against the government's agricultural reforms. Critics argued that the sedition law was being used to suppress dissent and criticism of the government. The defamation laws in India have been used by powerful individuals and organizations to file cases against journalists and media outlets, often to intimidate and silence criticism. According to the Reporters Without Borders World Press Freedom Index of the year 2022, India ranked 150th out of 180 countries. I believe things have gone worse after that, with legal harassment being one of the key factors contributing to the country's low ranking. The media are subject to various content regulations imposed by regulatory bodies such as the Press Council of India, the News Broadcasting Standards Authority, and the Advertising Standards Council of India. These regulations aim to maintain standards and prevent disseminating harmful or objectionable content. These regulations are open to abuse for influencing editorial decisions and leading to self-censorship. The Indian media have been accused of playing a role in the rise of religious extremism in the country. Certain sections of the media have amplified divisive narratives and given disproportionate coverage to issues that fuel religious tensions. In the aftermath of the Babri Masjid's demolition in 1992, several media outlets were criticized for their biased coverage, with several channels openly supporting the Hindu nationalist narrative. This contributed to the polarization of communities and the rise of religious extremism. The coverage of events such as the Ayodhya Ram Mandir Babri Masjid dispute, the protests against Citizenship Amendment Act, and the Delhi riots has been criticized for being skewed and polarizing, often portraying minority communities in a negative light. According to a study by the media watchdog Police Project, over 60% of the coverage on the CAA protests in Indian news channels portrayed the protesters as anti-nationals and disrupting law and order. The media have been accused of not doing enough to counter the spread of misinformation, hate speech, and conspiracy theories on social media platforms. This has further inflamed religious tensions and contributed to the growth of extremist ideologies. There is an unpleasant trend of rising influence of corporate interests on the Indian media. Media ownership has become more concentrated in the hands of a few large corporate houses. Allegations of self-censorship and bias have surfaced. In 2020, a report by Reporters Without Borders highlighted the growing concentration of media ownership in India. There are four major corporate groups controlling over 70% of the television news market. The report expressed concerns about the potential for editorial decisions to be influenced by business considerations. the media outlets have been reluctant to report on issues that could jeopardize their commercial interests. They cannot afford to strain their relationships with powerful corporate entities that are often closely tied to political establishments. This has led to concerns about self censorship and a lack of editorial independence. Some media houses are being accused of prioritizing profits over jingoistic integrity. The phenomenon of paid news, where businesses or political parties allegedly pay media outlets for favorable coverage, has emerged as a significant issue in recent years. This practice not only undermines the credibility of the media but also raises questions about the integrity of the information being disseminated to the public. In the run up to the 2009 general elections, the Press Council of India investigated allegations of paid news and found many instances of media outlets accepting money for favorable coverage of certain political candidates. This raised concerns about the media's ability to provide unbiased and accurate information to the public during elections. Despite these challenges, the Indian media landscape remains diverse with a range of outlets and journalists who strive to uphold the principles of free speech, independence, and critical journalism. There are many examples of media organizations and individual journalists who have pursued investigative reporting, exposed corruption and wrongdoing, and given voice to marginalized communities. The Indian Express's investigative coverage of the 2G spectrum scam in 2010 played a significant role in exposing one of the largest corruption scandals in Indian history, leading to the resignation of the then telecommunication minister and cancelling several controversial telecom licenses. The rise of digital and alternative media platforms has provided new avenues for dissenting voices. This has helped independent journalism to thrive. Citizen journalism, online news portals, and social media have empowered individuals and organizations to bypass traditional media structures and reach audiences directly. The Indian media have often been criticized for its insensitive and stereotypical coverage of marginalized communities and social movements. Many media outlets have been accused of sensationalizing stories related to the LGBTQ communities or portraying them in a negative light, perpetuating stigma and discrimination. News reports about same sex marriages, adoptions, or LGBTQ events like pride parades are sometimes embellished with dramatic language and imagery that mock or deride the community. Even positive coverage relies on tropes and superficial depictions, reinforcing outdated attitudes. Such biased reporting with a lack of nuances and sensitivity further marginalizes an already disadvantaged community. During student protests against issues like fee hikes or campus policies, the media has often portrayed the protesting students as disruptive troublemakers rather than giving due attention to their grievances. News reports focus more on blocked roads, vandalism, and confrontations with authorities during student agitations. The concerns that compel students to come out and protest, sometimes putting their academic careers at risk, are often sidelined. The media's coverage of caste based discrimination and atrocities against lower caste communities has been sporadic and superficial. For instance, brutal crimes like the 2020 Hathras gang rape failed to elicit sustained national outrage or media spotlight. Cases of everyday discrimination and violence often go unreported, while systemic issues like educational marginalization, lack of political representation, and economic disenfranchisement of Dalits are rarely discussed in depth. This results in a lack of accountability and allows caste based oppression to become normalized in society. The media must prioritize consistent, in depth, and sensitive reporting that highlights systemic issues, humanizes victims, and mobilizes public opinion to address the roots of caste based injustices. The Indian media's coverage of rape cases, especially after the Nirbhaya in 2012, has been a subject of intense scrutiny and criticism. While the media's role in raising awareness and sparking public outrage over sexual violence is commendable, there have been several instances where their reporting has been problematic and biased. In many rape cases, the media has been accused of sensationalizing the incidents and indulging in victim blaming. Instead of focusing on the crime and holding the perpetrators accountable, some media outlets have highlighted details about the victim's clothing, lifestyle, or actions. They perpetuate the myth that victims are to blame for the crimes committed against them. Despite laws prohibiting the disclosure of a rape victim's identity, some media outlets have revealed names, photographs, and other identifying details, violating the victim's privacy and causing further trauma. The breach of ethics has led to criticism and legal action against journalists and media organizations. In cases involving influential or high profile individuals as perpetrators, the media has often been accused of providing biased coverage that either downplays the severity of the crime or focuses on the accused's reputation and status. This unbalanced reporting can influence public perception and undermine the pursuit of justice. While the initial reporting on rape cases may generate significant media attention, there is often a lack of sustained coverage and in depth analysis of the broader societal issues surrounding sexual violence. The media have been criticized for failing to follow up on cases, track the progress of investigations, and provide a meaningful commentary on the systemic issues that enable such crimes. Sometimes the media's coverage of rape cases has reinforced stereotypes and prejudices based on the victims' or perpetrators' religious, caste, or socioeconomic backgrounds. This has the potential to further stigmatize certain communities and hamper efforts to address sexual violence as a societal issue that transcends specific identities. However, it is important to note that not all media outlets have followed the same patterns of problematic reporting. There have been instances of responsible and ethical journalism where media organizations have prioritized the privacy and dignity of victims, provided balanced and accurate coverage, and engaged in a meaningful analysis of the broader issues surrounding sexual violence. To address the challenges faced by the Indian media, a multi-pronged approach is necessary. Reforms to outdated laws and regulations, such as the defamation and sedition laws, are crucial to creating an enabling environment for press freedom. Strengthening the independence and autonomy of regulatory bodies can help ensure fair and impartial oversight without undue government interference. Media organizations themselves must prioritize ethical journalism, invest in training and capacity building, and adopt robust editorial policies to maintain objectivity and integrity. Encouraging media literacy among the public can also help counter the spread of misinformation and enable citizens to evaluate the credibility of news sources. The government needs to promote media plurality and diversity of ownership. This will mitigate the influence of corporate interests and ensure a more balanced representation of viewpoints and perspectives in the media landscape. In 2021, the Editors Guild of India launched a campaign called Sustaining Democracy, Sustaining Journalism to address the challenges faced by the media and promote ethical journalism. The campaign aimed to raise awareness about the importance of a free and independent press and advocate for reforms to strengthen media freedom in the country. Collaboration between media organizations, civil society, and academic institutions can foster research, discussions, and initiatives to address the challenges faced by the Indian media and strengthen its role as a pillar of democracy. The Indian media has seen highs and lows, mirroring India's complex socio-political landscape. While challenges remain, many journalists uphold free speech and critical journalism, offering hope for a more robust, independent media. As India navigates democracy, media plays a vital role in enabling transparency, accountability, and an informed public. By addressing concerns around laws, corporate influence, and divisive narratives, and promoting ethical journalism and diversity, the Indian media can strengthen its position as a guardian of public interest and catalyst for positive change. To nurture a free, responsible, and vibrant media landscape requires effort from all. So, Indian media can serve as watchdog for democracy and give voice to perspectives shaping the nation.